This is a special video I am making for the students to understand about a man of many talents. Really surprising, and one must understand as a commerce student. Benjamin Graham was born on May 9th, 1894 in London and sailed to New York with his family before he was 2. Young Benjamin was a prodigy in mathematics, classical languages, modern languages, expository writing, and anything else that the public schools had to offer. He had a tenacious memory and love of reading, a certain ticket to academic success then or later. His father's death at the age of 35 left him his 2 brothers, their mother, in the social and financial crunch. Benjamin early learned to work and to do without. No need here for a biological profile of the principal author, security analysis. Graham's own memoir delightfully covers that ground. Suffice is to say that the high school brainiac entered Columbia College as an alumni scholar in September 1911 at the age of 17. So much material had he already absorbed that he began with a semester's head start, the highest possible advanced standing. He mixed his academic studies with a bag of jobs, part-time, full-time, alike. Upon his graduation in 1914, he started work as a runner and board boy at the New York Stock Exchange, member firm of a Neuberger, Henderson and Love. Within a year, the board boy was playing the liquidation of the Guggenheim Exploration Company by going along the shares of Guggenheim and short the stocks of the companies in which Guggenheim had made a minority investment, as his no doubt bemused elders looked on. The profit was realized exactly as calculated, and everyone was happy, not least myself. Security analysis did not come out of the blue. Graham had supplemented his modest salary by contributing articles to the Magazine of Wall Street. His productions are unmistakably those of a self-assured and superbly educated Wall Street moneymaker. There was no need to quote expert opinion. He and his documents he interpreted were all the authority he needed. His favorite topics were the ones that he subsequently developed in the book, and he was a partial and special situations in which Graham Newman was to become so successful. When a high-flying and highly complex American international corporation fell from sky in 1920, Graham was able to show that the stock was cheap in relation to the evident value of its portfolio of miscellaneous investment assets. The shocking insolvency of Goodyear tire and rubber attracted his attention in 1921. The downfall of Goodyear is a remarkable incident even in the present plenitude of business disasters. He expressed in a characteristic Graham sentence that how many financial journalists had plenitude on the topics or tips of their tongues. So he shrewdly judged that Goodyear would be a survivor. In the summer of 1924, he hit on a theme that would echo through security analysis. It was the evident non sequitur of stocks valued in the market at less than the liquidating value of the companies that issued them. 8 stock bargains of the beaten track. The headline over the Benjamin Graham byline: stocks that are covered chiefly by cash or equivalent, no bonds, are preferred stock ahead of these issues. An unusually interesting group of securities in one case, that the Tonopah mining liquid assets of $4.31 per share towered over a market price just $1.38 per share. So for Graham, an era of sweet reasonableness in investment thinking seemed to end around in 1914. The typical investor was a businessman who analyzed a stock or a bond much as he might claim on a private business. It was usually a he, would naturally try to determine what the security issuing company owned, free and clear of any encumbrances. If the prospective investment was a bond, and it usually was, the businessman investor would seek assurances that the borrowing company had the financial strength to weather a depression. It's not undue modesty, Graham said. I had become something of a smart cookie in my particular field. So his specialty was the carefully analyzed out of the way investment, castaway stocks or bonds, liquidation, bankruptcies, arbitrage. Since at least early 1920s, Graham had preached the sermon of the margin of safety. As the future is a closed book, he urged in his saying, as investor, as a matter of self-defense against the unknown, should contrive to pay less than intrinsic value. So intrinsic value means which is justifiable by facts, the assets, the earnings, the dividend, definite prospects as distinct, let us say, from market quotations established by artificial manipulation or distorted by psychological excesses. He himself had gone from the ridiculous to the sublime in the conduct of his own investment career. His quick and easy grasp of mathematics made him a natural arbitrator. He would sell one stock and simultaneously buy another, or he would buy or sell shares or stocks against convertible bonds of the identifiable issuing company. So doing, he would lock in a profit that, if not certain, was close to guaranteed, as he vicissitudes of finance allowed. In one instance, in the early 1920s, he exploited an inefficiency in relationship with DuPont and then Red Hot General Motors. DuPont held a sizable stake in General Motors, and it was for the interest alone which the market valued a big chemical company. By implication, the rest of the business worth nothing. So to exploit this anomaly, Graham bought shares in DuPont and sold short the hedge appropriate number of shares to General Motors. When the market came to his senses and the price gap between DuPont and General Motors widened in the expected direction, Graham took a profit. Graham, like many other value investors after him, sometimes veered to austere precepts of safe and cheap investing. So Graham was only slightly younger than the master who sold General Motors and bought DuPont, allowed himself to be hoodwinked by a crude promoter of a company that seems not actually so to have existed, at least in anything like a state of glowing prosperity described by the manager of the pool to which Graham entrusted his money. An electric sign in Columbus Circle, an upper west side of the Manhattan, did bear the name of the object Graham misplaced confidence Saval Tire, but as the security analysis expert confessed in his memoir, that could have been the only tangible marker of the company's existence. Also, as far as Graham added, nobody complained to the district attorney of